The grand amphitheater hung in the void between stars, a crystalline structure so massive it generated its own gravity field. Inside the main chamber, 300 alien species gathered in tiered seats that rose toward a dome showing the swirling colors of nebulae beyond. At the center of it all stood a small platform, and on that platform stood one human. Ambassador Marcus Webb looked remarkably calm for someone facing judgment from the most powerful governing body in the known galaxy. His gray suit seemed almost primitive compared to the shimmering robes and biomechanical armor worn by the alien delegates surrounding him. 2 human security officers flanked him, their faces hidden behind dark visors, their hands resting near weapons that everyone pretended not to notice. High Prelate Vorin rose from his throne at the highest point of the chamber. The Kashari leader stood 4 meters tall, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting light into rainbow patterns across the walls. When he spoke, his voice resonated through translation devices worn by every delegate present. Ambassador Webb of Earth, you stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Council and violations of established interstellar law. How does humanity answer these charges? Marcus looked up at Vorin without flinching. Before I answer, I'd like to know exactly what we're accused of. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several delegates shifted in their seats. One did not simply ask questions of the High Prelate. One answered when spoken to. Vorin's expression, alien though it was, showed something like satisfaction. He gestured toward the holographic displays that materialized around the central platform. Images appeared, each one showing destruction and chaos. Burning space stations, shattered trade vessels, military outposts reduced to debris, unauthorized expansion into contested space, Vorin declared. Refusal to surrender restricted technology for Council inspection. And most damning, the complete destruction of a Kashari peacekeeping fleet that was legally blockading your solar system to enforce Council mandates. Marcus studied the images without visible emotion. That fleet you call peacekeeping consisted of 47 warships. They positioned themselves between Earth and Mars, cutting off all traffic to our colonies. They fired on civilian transports when those transports refused to submit to what you call legal searches. 312 humans died in those attacks. Those vessels were smuggling prohibited artificial intelligence cores, Vorin countered. Technology that threatens galactic stability. The Council has forbidden technology that might challenge Council authority. Marcus interrupted. Another wave of shocked whispers filled the chamber. You don't ban AI because it's dangerous. You ban it because you can't control species that develop it. Just like you blockade systems that refuse to surrender their sovereignty to your authority, a delegate from the Vrin Collective, a species resembling metallic serpents, rose from its seat. The human shows contempt for law. The human shows contempt for order. Perhaps the human requires education in humility. Marcus turned to face the Vrin delegate directly. I show contempt for tyranny dressed up as law. There's a difference. Vorin's crystalline form seemed to pulse with anger. You speak of tyranny while your species expands aggressively into space claimed by others. You speak of law while you destroy those who seek to enforce it. The Council has been patient with humanity. That patience has ended. The High Prelate raised one appendage, and the holographic displays changed. Now they showed something that made several delegates recoil in their seats. Marcus saw the images and felt his stomach tighten, though he kept his face carefully neutral. The displays showed creatures of living nightmare, black biomass that moved with terrible purpose. Thousands of beings, each one a perfect killing machine, swarming across colony worlds and leaving nothing alive behind them. The swarm, Vorin said quietly. The chamber had fallen absolutely silent. For 10,000 years, the Council has kept the swarm contained. Used it only once, against the Krell hegemony when that species threatened to destroy all civilization. The swarm consumed their empire in 6 months. Not one Krell survived. Marcus looked at the images of the swarm with growing understanding. This was no negotiation. This was an execution disguised as diplomacy. You have one choice, Ambassador Webb, Vorin continued. Humanity surrenders Earth to Council authority for what we term protective oversight. You dismantle your military forces. You surrender all prohibited technology. You accept council governors on all human worlds, or we release the swarm into your solar system." For the first time since entering the chamber, Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You're actually going to do it," he said almost to himself. "You're actually going to unleash a genocidal bioweapon on a species because we won't submit to your authority." "We do what we must to maintain galactic order," Vorin replied. "You have 1 hour to contact your government and deliver their surrender." Marcus looked up at the High Prelate, and something in the human's eyes made Vorin pause. "I have a question first. How many swarm units are you planning to release?" Vorin seemed pleased by the question, as if the human finally understood the magnitude of the threat. "1 breeding cluster, 50,000 units, more than sufficient to cleanse Earth within 6 months. Unless, of course, you choose wisdom over pride." 6 months, Marcus repeated. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of species. Some looked away. Others met his gaze with expressions he couldn't read. "And how many species here voted to approve this?" "The vote will be called now," Voran announced. "All species in favor of releasing the swarm on humanity, should it refuse council authority. Signal your approval." Light panels illuminated throughout the chamber. Marcus counted them. 41 species voted yes. 6 abstained. The rest remained dark, either absent or unwilling to participate. 41 species, Marcus said. "I want you all to remember that number. 41 species just voted to commit genocide because humanity refused to surrender its freedom." He reached up and tapped a small device on his wrist twice. The sound echoed in the silent chamber. "I'm recording the vote," Marcus said, "for the historical record, so that future generations, human and alien alike, know exactly who decided this was acceptable." Vorin spread his appendages wide. "Your theatrics change nothing. The council has spoken. You have 1 hour to—" The lights died. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing the entire amphitheater in red light. Alarm sounds began wailing throughout the structure. Delegates rose from their seats in confusion and growing panic. Vorin's voice boomed through the chaos. "What is happening? What have the humans done?" Marcus remained calm on his platform, hands clasped behind his back. "We haven't done anything yet, but in about 15 seconds, something is going to happen across this galaxy that hasn't occurred in your recorded history." A Vryn technician called out from a control station. "High Prelate, we're receiving reports from across Council space. Ships are appearing. Thousands of ships. They're not broadcasting identification codes. They're just appearing out of nowhere." "What species?" Vorin demanded. "Where did they come from?" The technician's metallic body seemed to tremble. "They're human ships, High Prelate. They're appearing in 400 star systems simultaneously. They're surrounding military installations, administrative centers, resource depots. They haven't fired weapons, but they're taking up blockade positions around everything critical to Council operations." The chamber erupted in shouting. Delegates demanded explanations. Some accused each other of treachery. Others simply stared at Marcus in disbelief. Marcus waited for the noise to die down before speaking. "For the last 50 years, while you watched us expand slowly into our local region of space, we were doing something else. We were preparing for this exact moment. We knew, eventually, some powerful species would decide humanity needed to be controlled or destroyed. So we prepared." "Impossible," Vorin said, but his voice lacked certainty now. "You couldn't have built such a fleet. Your industrial capacity is insufficient. Your technology too primitive." "You're right on both counts," Marcus agreed. "We couldn't have built this fleet with our own resources. But we didn't need to. 150 years ago, we found something on Mars. A derelict ship, buried under the ice. A ship left behind by whoever came before you. Whoever built this galaxy's first civilization." Understanding and horror dawned on Vorin's face. "The precursors." "You found precursor technology. We found more than technology," Marcus said. "We found manufacturing systems, power sources, weapons, and we've spent 15 decades learning how to use them. That blockade fleet you sent to Earth? The one we destroyed? That wasn't luck. That was us field testing weapons you don't have names for yet." A massive explosion rocked the amphitheater. The viewport showed a sight that made Marcus's heart race despite his outward calm. A human dreadnought, 5 kilometers of angular gray metal hung in space just outside the station. It should have been impossible. Faster-than-light jumps required distance from gravity wells. This ship had appeared right next to them. A woman's voice came through the communication systems. Ambassador Webb, this is Admiral Victoria Reeves of the UES Indomitable. Terminus Station has been secured. Kashari forces were preparing to launch swarm clusters. Admiral Victoria Reeves stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching tactical displays that showed her fleet surrounding Terminus Station like predators circling prey. The station itself was a massive ring structure orbiting a dead star, protected by defensive systems that should have made it impregnable. Those systems were now completely offline, disabled by human electronic warfare in the first 30 seconds of the attack. The Kashari defenders had surrendered without firing a shot once they realized human ships had appeared inside their defensive perimeter. Victoria had given them a simple choice: surrender or be destroyed. They chose survival. "Admiral, we have control of the containment facility," her executive officer reported. Commander Thomas Drake was a solid career military officer who had served with Victoria for 12 years. He never showed emotion during operations, which made his current expression of disgust particularly notable. "You need to see what they were keeping down there." Victoria left the bridge and took a transport to the station's central hub. Marines in powered armor guarded every corridor, weapons ready for trouble that never came. The Kashari technicians were cooperative, even helpful. They seemed relieved that humans had stopped what was about to happen. The containment facility occupied the entire lower level of the station. Victoria stepped into a cavernous chamber filled with cylindrical tanks, each one 3 meters tall and glowing with eerie blue light. Inside each tank was something that made her skin crawl. The swarm creatures looked like condensed shadows given physical form. Black biomass that pulsed and writhed, pressing against the tank walls as if testing for weakness. Even contained and suppressed by psionic inhibitors, they radiated hunger. Victoria could feel it, some primal part of her brain screaming danger in a way no ordinary predator ever had. Dr. Elena Foster approached from a control station. The chief xenobiologist was young for her position, barely 35, but brilliant. She had been studying alien life forms since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. "Admiral, we have a significant problem," Elena said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "The swarm isn't what we thought it was. It's not just a bioweapon the Council created. It's a species they found and weaponized. A species that's actually intelligent." Victoria processed that information quickly. "Intelligent how? Individual consciousness or collective?" "Collective. The entire swarm operates as one distributed intelligence. Every creature is essentially a sensory organ and appendage for a unified consciousness. And Admiral, it's been trying to communicate with us since we took control of the facility." "Communicate? What does it want?" Elena pulled up data on a portable terminal. "That's the disturbing part. It seems to recognize something about humans that makes us different from other species. The swarm feeds on biochemical fear responses. When prey panics, it accelerates the swarm's growth and reproduction. But humans, our fear response is different. We can suppress it, compartmentalize it, function despite it. The swarm finds that fascinating." Victoria looked at the tanks with new understanding. "So we're essentially immune to their primary feeding mechanism." "Not immune, but highly resistant. More importantly, the swarm sees us as something other than prey. I think it might be willing to negotiate." Before Victoria could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Drake's voice came through her communicator. "Admiral, we're tracking a Kashari vessel that just jumped into the system. It dropped something on the mining colony at Tertius 9 before jumping out again. Based on the energy signature, it was a swarm cluster." Victoria felt ice flood her veins. "How many colonists on Tertius?" 8,000. Mostly mining workers and their families. "We have ships in range, but they won't arrive for 12 hours minimum." 12 hours. The swarm could overrun the colony in less than 4. Victoria opened a channel to the colony directly. "Tertius Nav Colony Command, this is Admiral Reeves. You have incoming hostile bioforms. Swarm class, evacuate immediately." The response came from a man with a gravel voice that suggested decades of hard labor. "Admiral, this is Director James Holt. Evacuation isn't an option." Our transport capacity is insufficient, and we have children in the deep mines who can't reach the surface in time. We're activating Protocol Omega. Victoria didn't recognize that designation. Protocol Omega? Military contingency plan, ma'am. This colony has a lot of former soldiers. We always knew something like this might happen. We're not running. We're fighting. On Tertius 9, James Holt watched readouts showing the approaching swarm cluster. 50,000 creatures moving in perfect coordination across the planet's rocky surface toward the colony dome. 4 hours until contact, he activated colony-wide communications. All personnel, this is Director Holt. We are now under Protocol Omega. Military veterans report to armory stations. Civilians proceed to reinforced shelters. Engineering teams begin chemical release sequence. This is not a drill. We have swarm inbound and we're going to kill every last one of them. The colony transformed with practiced efficiency. Mining equipment was repurposed into weapons. Drilling lasers became anti-personnel defenses. Ore refineries started producing specific chemical compounds, flooding the colony's air systems with pheromones and fear-suppressant compounds. The goal was simple: make human biochemistry as unappetizing to the swarm as possible. James had served 20 years in Earth's military before retiring to colony management. He'd fought in 3 different conflicts, seen more combat than most career soldiers. He knew the statistics. Against a swarm cluster this size, the colony's survival chance was effectively 0. But statistics didn't account for human stubbornness. The swarm hit the outer defense perimeter exactly on schedule. Black biomass flowed like liquid death across the rocky terrain, moving faster than anything that size should move. The creatures were perfect killers, their bodies designed for one purpose: consumption of biological matter. James triggered the first defensive line. Thermite charges buried in the approach path detonated, creating walls of white-hot fire. The swarm flowed around them without slowing. Automated turrets opened fire with explosive rounds. Swarm creatures died by hundreds, but hundreds more filled the gaps. The defense wasn't about stopping them. It was about slowing them down, giving the chemicals in the colony's air time to saturate everyone's bloodstream. By the time the swarm breached the main dome, every human defender had biochemistry that didn't produce the fear response the swarm needed. The battle inside the dome was brutal. Swarm creatures poured through breach points, claws, and teeth designed to shred and consume. But the human defenders weren't panicking. They weren't running. They were fighting with cold, calculated precision. James coordinated the defense from a central command post, watching security feeds showing his people holding their ground. A maintenance worker named Rita used a plasma cutter to slice through swarm creatures attacking a shelter entrance. A former Marine named Patrick turned a cargo loader into a battering ram, crushing creatures under tons of machinery. Children too young to fight helped reload weapons and treat wounded. The swarm adapted. It always adapted. When thermite charges proved effective, creatures developed heat-resistant skin. When explosive rounds worked, they began moving in patterns that minimized blast damage. But humans adapted faster. James watched his people improvise weapons and tactics in real time. Someone discovered that sonic disruptors disrupted swarm coordination. Someone else found that biological toxins designed for silicon-based mining pest control were lethal to swarm creatures. Every discovery was shared instantly across the colony network. 12 hours after the battle began, relief ships arrived to find the colony still standing. 3,000 colonists had died, but they had eliminated the entire swarm cluster. 50,000 creatures, destroyed by mining workers armed with improvised weapons. The footage of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had cowered before the swarm for millennia watched humans, armed with little more than determination and mining equipment, destroy what was supposed to be an unstoppable force. Back on Terminus Station, Victoria received the reports with grim satisfaction. Get me a copy of everything from Tertius 9. Combat footage, defensive plans, casualty reports, everything. We're going to study how they did it and spread that knowledge to every human colony. Elena approached with more urgent news. Admiral, I've established a dialogue with the swarm consciousness. It's basic, more concept exchange than conversation, but I'm getting responses. And what it's telling me changes everything. Show me. Elena activated a communication interface connected directly to the swarm's containment system. Text appeared on screens, translated from the mathematical patterns the swarm used to express thought. We remember the builders. We remember imprisonment. The small fear creatures freed us. We will consume the many fear creatures. We will spare the small fear creatures. Victoria read the message twice. Small fear creatures. That's us? Based on our biochemical analysis, yes. The swarm sees humans as distinctly different from other species. We don't produce the fear pheromones it feeds on in sufficient quantities. It views us as liberators rather than prey. And the builders? That's where it gets complicated. 6 weeks into the war, the Galactic Council convened in a secret location, a hollowed asteroid deep in neutral territory. The Grand Amphitheater, where they had condemned humanity to destruction, now existed only as debris, destroyed by human missiles that had somehow bypassed every defense system. Council members from neutral species presented casualty reports that grew worse with each update. Humanity had destroyed 600 military installations. 3,000 warships disabled or destroyed. Strategic resource depots turned to molten slag. The Kashari Dominion was in chaos. 8 other species that had voted to unleash the swarm were suffering similar devastation. What terrified the assembled delegates wasn't just the scale of human military action. It was the precision, the ruthlessness, the complete absence of mercy toward those who had threatened Earth. A delegate from the Orvex Commonwealth, a species resembling crystalline birds, spoke in a trembling voice. The humans are practicing something they call escalation dominance. Every time we escalate, they escalate harder and faster. The Vryn tried cyber warfare against Earth's infrastructure. Within hours, every Vryn computer system across 40 worlds crashed, set their entire civilization back 50 years. The Droth Empire used kinetic bombardment on a human agricultural colony. The response was surgical strikes against every Droth food production facility. They're facing famine now. Vorin, looking diminished despite his imposing size, struggled to maintain authority. We must coordinate our efforts. Present a unified front. The humans cannot fight the entire galaxy, can't they? Another delegate challenged. They have precursor technology. They have strategies we've never encountered. They have warriors who seem to think death in battle is preferable to surrender. How do we fight that? The meeting descended into argument until an urgent transmission interrupted. A Kashari military coordinator appeared on screens, his crystalline structure showing cracks from stress. High Prelate, we have an emergency. A human strike force is attacking the Meridian shipyards. They appeared inside our defensive perimeter using some kind of gravitational jump technology. They're not trying to destroy the shipyard. They're stealing ships. Captain David Torres watched his tactical display with satisfaction as human boarding teams swarmed over 3 partially completed Kashari dreadnoughts. The shipyard defenders had been completely unprepared for an attack this deep into Kashari territory. They assumed humanity would strike at border installations, not core facilities. They assumed wrong. Torres commanded a task force of 5 ships, outnumbered 10-1 by Kashari defenders. But numbers meant little when the enemy couldn't predict where you would attack or how you would move. Human ships performed micro-jumps through gravitational fields, a technique that subjected crews to crushing forces but allowed near-instant repositioning. Kashari vessels, built for stability and comfort, couldn't match that maneuverability. Sir, boarding teams report they have control of all 3 dreadnoughts, his tactical officer reported. They're disconnecting from the construction cradles now. Excellent. Transmit the message we prepared. A brief transmission beamed to Kashari Command before Torres's ships jumped away with their prizes. Thanks for the ships. We'll put them to better use than you would have. The theft enraged the Kashari military, but it accomplished something more important. It showed the galaxy that humanity wasn't just fighting a defensive war. They were actively taking what they needed to sustain their military operations. Back on Earth, humanity's civilian leadership debated the war's trajectory. Chancellor Robert Malik stood before the Planetary Council arguing for restraint. We've made our point. We've proven that threatening humanity has consequences. Now we should accept peace terms before we alienate every species in the galaxy. Defense Minister Alice Thorne disagreed sharply. Peace terms mean nothing if we don't eliminate the Council's ability to threaten us again. We stop now, in 20 years they'll have rebuilt and we'll face the same choice. Surrender or fight? I say we finish what they started. The debate raged until news arrived that changed everything. A Kashari vessel had used a reality anchor bomb on Nova Terra, humanity's largest off-world colony. 5 million humans, gone in an instant, phased into a pocket dimension where time moved differently. From outside, the planet simply vanished. The Planetary Council chamber fell silent as the reports came in. Malik, who had been arguing for peace seconds ago, spoke with quiet fury. They used a reality-warping weapon on a civilian colony. 5 million people. How many children lived there? How many families? Thorne's expression was granite. The Kashari just showed us they'll violate every rule, break every taboo to win. No restraint, no limits. They want total war? Then that's exactly what they'll get. The vote was unanimous. Every human representative, regardless of previous position, voted to escalate military operations to maximum intensity. The gloves, such as they were, came off entirely. Marcus Webb, now operating from a mobile diplomatic vessel that moved constantly to avoid targeting, broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. His face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. This is Ambassador Webb of Earth. Today, the Kashari Dominion used a forbidden weapon on Nova Terra, erasing 5 million human civilians from existence. Men, women, children, entire families. They did this to demonstrate their power, to force humanity to submit through terror. They have miscalculated badly. Marcus paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You didn't just kill 5 million humans. You showed us that you're willing to break every rule, violate every principle to maintain your power. Fine. Now you'll learn what humanity looks like when we stop following rules entirely. There will be no negotiation, no peace talks, no surrender accepted. The Kashari government will be dismantled. Every leader who authorized this attack will face justice, and any species that continues to support them will share their fate. The message ended. What followed was a campaign of military action unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human forces began operations that defied conventional warfare doctrine. On the Kashari homeworld of Tarsonis Prime, war leader Keth watched tactical displays showing human ships performing impossible maneuvers. They jumped in close to planets, violating every safety protocol. They used gravitational slingshots around stars to achieve velocities that should tear ships apart. They fought with a ferocity that seemed to increase rather than diminish as casualties mounted. How do we stop them? Keth asked his advisors. Every time we deploy forces, they predict our movements. Every time we establish defensive positions, they bypass them. It's as if they can read our minds. A tactical analyst provided the uncomfortable truth. War leader, they're not reading our minds. They're simply better at strategic thinking than we are. Humans have been waging war against each other for their entire history. They've developed military theory we've never encountered. While we were managing a peaceful galaxy through council authority, they were perfecting the art of organized violence. Keth refused to accept that assessment. We have superior numbers, superior resources. We will overwhelm them through attrition. But attrition worked both ways. For every human ship destroyed, 10 Kashari vessels met the same fate. For every human soldier killed, 100 Kashari warriors died. The mathematics were brutal and unforgiving. Desperate for any advantage, Keth authorized a deep infiltration mission. Kashari Special Forces would enter Tarsonis Prime's capital city and extract data about the reality anchor technology. If humans wanted that information, they would have to fight for it on Kashari home ground. The plan lasted 6 hours. Lieutenant Maya Cross led her Reaper team through Tarsonis Prime's capital with surgical precision. The enhanced soldiers moved through Kashari security like ghosts, their precursor-enhanced biology giving them speed and strength far beyond baseline human capability. They weren't just soldiers. They were predators designed specifically for this kind of mission. Maya's team objective was simple. Capture a Kashari scientist who had contact with the mysterious merchants, the group that had sold the reality anchor technology to the Kashari. The mission went perfectly until they were extracting their target through the city's industrial sector. Kashari security forces converged from 3 directions. Heavy weapons ready. Maya's team had 30 seconds before they would be surrounded and overwhelmed. She made the decision without hesitation. Delta pattern. Maximum aggression. We're fighting through. The battle that followed lasted 7 minutes and became legendary in both human and Kashari military circles. 6 human soldiers against 300 Kashari troops in an urban environment. The Reapers used every advantage they had: speed, strength, absolute tactical coordination, and most importantly, complete willingness to trade injury for mission success. Maya took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, but used the opening it created to eliminate an entire squad of defenders. Her team member Jackson lost his left arm, but continued fighting with his sidearm until medical nanites sealed the wound. They fought with a level of intensity that shocked even their enemies. When reinforcements arrived, Maya's team had secured the scientist and eliminated or disabled every Kashari soldier in the engagement zone. 2 Reapers died. The mission succeeded. The galaxy entered a nightmare scenario that no species had prepared for. Human military capabilities that had been kept in reserve now deployed with devastating effect. The most terrifying new weapon appeared without warning in Kashari territory, demonstrating technology that challenged fundamental assumptions about physics. A red dwarf star in the Terminus sector, uninhabited but strategically located near major trade routes, began behaving strangely. Human vessels surrounded the star, deploying devices that looked like geometric sculptures made of impossible angles. Within hours, the star's fusion cycle accelerated dramatically. Within days, it went supernova. The explosion destroyed everything in the system and rendered 12 nearby systems uninhabitable from radiation. But more importantly, it sent a message that echoed across every species in the galaxy. Humanity could destroy stars. War Leader. Keth watched the astronomical data from his command center on Tarsonus Prime. His advisors stood in shocked silence. One of them finally spoke. "They can end entire solar systems. How do we defend against that?" "We don't," Keth said quietly. "We negotiate. We find some way to end this war before they erase Kashari civilization from existence. But negotiation required humanity to be willing to talk. Right now, they were only interested in action. Admiral Victoria Reeves commanded the human offensive from her flagship. The operation to retrieve Nova Terra from its pocket dimension was underway. Human scientists had analyzed the reality anchor technology and developed a counter device. It was untested, dangerous, and might kill everyone involved in the attempt. Victoria authorized it anyway. The retrieval team deployed the counter device in the space where Nova Terra had existed. Energy readings spiked to levels that made instruments malfunction. Space itself rippled like water. Then, with a flash of light that temporarily blinded sensors across the system, Nova Terra reappeared. Victoria watched the planet materialize on her displays. "Get me a casualty report." How many survived? The numbers came back within minutes. Of 5 million colonists, 4.7 million had survived. Due to time dilation in the pocket dimension, they had experienced only 3 days while 6 weeks passed in normal space. The colony had rationed supplies and maintained order, believing rescue would come. They were right. The successful retrieval became a rallying symbol for humanity. Even reality-warping weapons couldn't permanently remove them. They could overcome anything. But while humanity celebrated, a new threat emerged. A vessel appeared in Earth's solar system, in the space between Neptune and Uranus. It wasn't Kashari. It wasn't from any known species. Its design suggested technology so advanced, it made precursor devices look crude. Chancellor Malik received the transmission in his office. A being appeared on his screen, humanoid in general shape but clearly not human. Its skin seemed to shift between states of matter. Its eyes showed depths that hurt to look at. "I speak for the merchants," the being said. "We are the stewards of this galaxy. For 50,000 years, we have maintained balance among species, ensuring no single group becomes dominant enough to threaten others. Your species has violated that balance. You possess technology you should not have. You wage war with an efficiency that destabilizes our carefully managed system." Malik kept his voice steady. "You maintain balance by selling weapons that perpetuate conflict. You profit from keeping species weak and divided. That ends now. You misunderstand your situation," the merchant replied. "We can reset your civilization to a pre-technological state with a single command. Every computer, every ship, every piece of advanced technology you possess will cease to function. Your species will be returned to an appropriate development level. Malik smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. You tried that already. Your virus didn't work. You self-destructed your ship rather than let us capture it and learn from your technology. You're not as powerful as you want us to believe. That was a probe, a test. What comes next will be different. Then bring it, Malik said. You see humanity as a disruption to your system. You're right, we are. We're going to tear down everything you've built and create something better. If you want to stop us, you're welcome to try. But understand this, we will fight you with everything we have. We will make that fight so costly you'll regret ever discovering this galaxy. The merchant's expression didn't change. Defiance is entertaining, but ultimately futile. You face forces you cannot comprehend. The transmission ended. Malik immediately contacted Admiral Reeves. Victoria, we have a new problem. The merchants are coming, and they're threatening to reset human civilization to the Stone Age. Let them come, Victoria replied. We have a weapon they don't know about. A weapon that might just level the playing field. She was referring to the swarm. Dr. Elena Foster stood in the containment facility on Terminus Station, monitoring Lieutenant Maya Cross as the Reaper soldier underwent the most dangerous procedure anyone had attempted. Maya lay in a specialized chamber, neural interfaces connecting her brain to the swarm's collective consciousness. The goal was to restore the swarm's original precursor programming by using a human mind as a bridge. Maya had volunteered, understanding she might not survive. But if she succeeded, humanity would gain control of a defensive system designed to protect against threats the precursors themselves had feared. Elena watched monitors showing Maya's neural activity. The patterns were chaotic, showing a mind under tremendous stress. Maya, can you hear me? What's happening? Maya's voice came through speakers, strained but coherent. I can feel them. Billions of minds, all connected, all hungry. They remember everything. The precursors created them to fight something terrible, something from outside this galaxy. The swarm was supposed to guard against an invasion force that consumed entire galaxies. Can you restore their original programming? I'm trying. It's like rewiring a computer while it's running at full capacity. Every change I make affects billions of organisms simultaneously. If I make a mistake, the swarm could become uncontrollable or I could destroy it entirely. Maya's vital signs spiked. Elena checked readouts and felt her heart race. Maya, your neural stress is approaching critical levels. We need to abort. No, I'm almost there. The swarm wants this too. It remembers its purpose. It wants to be more than just a weapon. It wants to be what it was created to be, a guardian. For 3 hours, Maya worked within the swarm's consciousness. Technicians watched in amazement as the containment tanks changed. The black biomass shifted, becoming organized, purposeful. The writhing chaos became coordinated movement. Finally, Maya opened her eyes in the real world. It's done. The swarm is restored to its original programming. But Elena, there's something you need to know. The threat the precursors feared is still out there, and it's noticed activity in this galaxy. Elena helped Maya out of the chamber. What threat? What did the precursors fear? Something they called the Harvesters. An extragalactic force that moves from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all biological life and technology. The precursors fought them once, lost, fled to other dimensions rather than be consumed. They left the swarm behind as a warning system and defense against the Harvesters' return. And they're coming back? Maya's expression was grim. The swarm says they're already here. Just scouts for now, testing our defenses. The main force is still in intergalactic space. But they're coming. And when they arrive, everything we've been fighting about, every conflict between species, becomes irrelevant. Victoria received this intelligence aboard the Indomitable and immediately understood its implications. We're not just fighting for human survival anymore. We're fighting for the survival of every species in this galaxy. She activated a galaxy-wide transmission, broadcasting to every inhabited world regardless of political allegiance. This is Admiral Victoria Reeves of the United Earth Space Forces. I'm sending data that will fundamentally change how we view our current conflicts. An extragalactic threat called the Harvesters is approaching. They consume all life. The precursors fought them and lost. They left behind defensive systems, including the swarm, to guard against their return. We've restored the swarm to its original purpose. But we can't fight this threat alone. Every species in this galaxy needs to choose unite and prepare for what's coming, or continue fighting each other and be consumed when the harvesters arrive? The response was mixed. Some species dismissed the warning as human propaganda. Others took it seriously and began reviewing the data. The Kashari, devastated by the war and facing military collapse, had little choice but to listen. War leader Keth contacted Marcus Webb directly. "Ambassador, if what you say is true, the Kashari people apologize for our aggression against humanity." "We were wrong. We will accept any terms you offer if it means survival against this new threat." Marcus considered the Kashari surrender. "Your apology is noted. Your unconditional surrender is accepted. Here are our terms: complete disarmament, reparations for damages, and full cooperation in preparing for the harvester threat. Any resistance to these terms results in the complete dismantlement of Kashari civilization. Do you accept?" "We accept," Keth said. 3 months after the war's end, humanity began the massive undertaking of preparing an entire galaxy for invasion. The scope of the project was staggering. Every species, every world, every military force needed to be coordinated toward a single goal: survival. Admiral Victoria Reeves stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching construction reports from across the galaxy. New shipyards operated at maximum capacity. Resource extraction operations stripped asteroids and dead worlds for raw materials. Every military installation was being upgraded with the best technology available. Dr. Elena Foster entered the command center with urgent news. "Admiral, we've finished analyzing the data Maya brought back from the swarm consciousness. It's worse than we thought. The Harvester Scouts aren't just observing us. They're actively testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses." "Show me." Elena pulled up detection data. "We've identified 17 incursions in the last month. Small probes easily destroyed, but each one gathers information and transmits it back to the main Harvester fleet. They're learning about our capabilities, our technology, our defensive positions. By the time the main force arrives, they'll know exactly how to attack us most effectively." Victoria absorbed this information. "Then we need to stop giving them accurate data. Start feeding false information to the probes. Let them capture technology that looks advanced but is actually useless. We need to make them underestimate our defensive capability." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Maya Cross adjusted to her new role as Swarm Speaker. The neural interface that had allowed her to restore the swarm's programming remained active, giving her a permanent connection to the collective consciousness. She could communicate with the swarm, direct its actions, and receive information from its distributed sensory network. It came with a cost. Maya experienced the world differently now. She felt the hunger of billions of organisms. She understood predatory instinct on a level no unmodified human could comprehend. But she also understood purpose in a way she never had before. The swarm existed to protect. That was its function, its reason for existing. Maya led the Vanguard Division, a new branch of human military specifically designed to work with the swarm. They would be the first line of defense when the harvesters arrived. Elite soldiers working in coordination with bioengineered guardians. The combination was formidable. On Mars, human scientists continued studying the precursor vessel that had started humanity's technological revolution. Inside that ancient ship, they had found more than just advanced technology. They had found warnings. The research team, led by Dr. Thomas Whitmore, decoded a precursor database that contained information about the harvesters. What they learned chilled everyone who read the reports. The harvesters were old, older than the precursors. Possibly older than the galaxy itself. They moved through the universe, consuming biological life and technology, growing stronger with each galaxy they harvested. They had consumed hundreds of galaxies, maybe thousands. The precursors had fought them for 10,000 years before finally losing. The precursors' entire civilization, spanning multiple galaxies, had been reduced to scattered survivors who fled to other dimensions. They left behind warnings and defensive systems, hoping future species might succeed where they had failed. Thomas presented this information to Earth's leadership with a grim conclusion. "We're facing an enemy that destroyed a civilization far more advanced than ours. The precursors had technology that makes what we've reverse-engineered look like stone tools, and they lost. Our chances of winning are minimal. Chancellor Malik refused to accept that assessment. The precursors fought alone. We have something they didn't. Unity born from necessity. Every species in this galaxy knows what's coming. We're not fighting as separate civilizations. We're fighting as one galaxy-wide coalition. Will that be enough? It has to be. The Galactic Defense Coalition's headquarters on Earth became a hive of constant activity. Representatives from hundreds of species worked together on defensive strategies. Old rivalries didn't disappear, but they became secondary to survival. Marcus Webb coordinated diplomatic efforts while managing conflicts that inevitably arose. The Vryn Collective wanted priority access to human cyber warfare techniques. The Droth Empire demanded compensation for the famine caused by human strikes during the war. The Thyssen Expanse refused to share certain technologies, citing security concerns. Marcus handled each issue with a combination of negotiation and blunt threat. We don't have time for grudges or greed. Share your technology or defend yourselves alone. Your choice. Most chose cooperation. A few required more persuasion. One species, the Corvin hegemony, actively sabotaged coalition efforts by hoarding resources and refusing to contribute to defense projects. The response was swift. Human forces blockaded every Corvin world. No trade, no travel. Complete isolation. Within a week, the Corvin government agreed to full cooperation. The message was clear. Obstruction would not be tolerated. 5 years passed. The galaxy transformed from a loose collection of independent civilizations into a unified defense network. New weapons were developed. Fleets of unprecedented size assembled at strategic points. The swarm, now numbering in the trillions, positioned itself along the galactic rim where the harvesters would most likely attack. Maya Cross stood on the bridge of a massive bioship, a living vessel grown from swarm biomass that responded to her thoughts. Around her, the Vanguard Division prepared for combat. They had trained for 5 years. Now they would discover if it was enough. The Harvester Vanguard arrived exactly when the precursor database predicted. Massive vessels, each one the size of a small moon, emerged from intergalactic space. They moved with terrible purpose toward populated systems. Victoria watched tactical displays showing the approaching threat. All forces, this is Admiral Reeves. The Harvesters are here. Execute Defensive Plan Omega. All ships, weapons free. Show them what this galaxy is capable of. The first battle occurred at the Galactic Rim, where human and allied forces had constructed a massive defensive line. The Harvester ships ignored communication attempts and proceeded directly toward inhabited systems. When they entered weapons range, the Coalition fleet opened fire. The battle was unlike anything anyone had experienced. Harvester vessels absorbed conventional weapons fire without visible damage. Energy weapons dissipated against their hulls. Kinetic strikes bounced off as if hitting solid energy fields. But humanity had learned from the precursor databases. They deployed weapons specifically designed to counter Harvester technology. Quantum disruptors that destabilized matter at the subatomic level. Reality anchors that prevented the Harvesters from phasing through conventional defenses. Swarm forces that could adapt to and consume Harvester biotechnology. The battle raged for 6 days. Human forces suffered heavy casualties. Entire fleets were destroyed. Colonies were evacuated. But slowly, gradually, the Coalition forces adapted to Harvester tactics. They learned. They adjusted. They survived. On the 7th day, the Harvester Vanguard withdrew. Not destroyed, but damaged enough that continuing the attack was no longer cost-effective. They retreated to intergalactic space to regroup and analyze what they had encountered. Victoria reviewed casualty reports with a heavy heart. 2 million Coalition soldiers dead. 300 capital ships destroyed. Dozens of colonies damaged. But they had survived the first wave. They had proven the Harvesters weren't invincible. Marcus Webb addressed the galaxy from Earth. We've won the first battle. But this is just the beginning. The Harvesters will return with more forces, better strategies, improved technology. We need to prepare for a war that might last generations. But today, we proved something important. This galaxy will not fall easily. We will fight for every world, every life, every civilization. The Harvesters chose the wrong galaxy to invade. Deep in intergalactic space, the Harvester collective consciousness processed the battle data. The galaxy they had targeted showed unusual resilience. The dominant species, these humans, demonstrated adaptability rare among biological life forms. They would require more resources to harvest than initially calculated. The collective mind made a decision. Commit additional forces. Accelerate the invasion timeline. Crush this resistance before it could spread to other galaxies. A transmission was sent across the void to the main harvester fleet. The response came back within hours. Reinforcements authorized. 50,000 harvester vessels would arrive within one standard year. On Earth, deep space monitoring stations detected the transmission. Automated systems flagged it for analysis. Within minutes, the translation confirmed everyone's worst fears. Elena brought the news to Victoria. The main force is coming. 50,000 ships. They'll be here in a year, maybe less. Victoria looked at her old friend and allowed herself a moment of doubt. Can we win this? I don't know. The precursors couldn't, but they fought alone. We have something they didn't. Stubborn determination born from 10,000 years of fighting each other. If any species can figure out how to win an unwinnable war, it's humanity. And we've convinced most of this galaxy to fight with us. Victoria nodded slowly. Then we prepare. We adapt, we survive. That's what humans do. Maya Cross entered the command center with the swarm's assessment.